Story 1. The Honest Woodcutter. Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by tall trees and green fields, there lived a poor woodcutter named Ram. Ram was a kind man. He lived alone in a small hut near the forest. Every day he went into the forest to cut wood and sell it in the village market. One morning, Ram went into the forest as usual. He had his axe with him, ready to cut wood. As he walked deeper into the forest, he came across a large old tree. He had never seen such a big tree before. It looked magical, and its branches stretched high into the sky. Ram decided to chop it down. He swung his axe at the tree. Suddenly, the tree spoke. "Please don't cut me down," the tree said in a gentle voice. Ram was shocked. He had never heard a tree speak before. Who are you?" he asked. "I am the spirit of the forest," the tree replied. "I have lived here for hundreds of years. If you spare me, I will grant you one wish." Ram was surprised but curious. "One wish?" he asked. "What kind of wish?" "The kind that will make your life better," said the tree. "Anything you wish for, I will give you." Ram thought for a moment. He was a poor man, and his life was hard. He could barely make enough money from selling wood to feed himself. But Ram was an honest man, and he didn't want to make the tree angry. "I don't need much," Ram said. "I just want enough money to live comfortably and take care of myself." The tree smiled. "Your wish will be granted, but you must promise me one thing." "What is that?" Ram asked. "You must promise that you will always be honest and never take more than you need," the tree warned. Ram agreed without hesitation. "I promise," he said. The tree nodded, and with a wave of its branches, a bright light surrounded Ram. When the light faded, he found himself holding a heavy sack of gold coins. Ram was amazed. "This is all mine?" he asked. "Yes," said the tree, "but remember your promise. Only take what you need." Ram thanked the tree and hurried back to his village. When he reached home, he looked inside the sack. It was full of shining gold coins. He couldn't believe his eyes. He could now live without worry for the rest of his life. Ram went to the village and shared his good fortune. He used some of the gold to buy food and clothes. He helped his neighbors who were in need. Soon, everyone in the village knew about the kind woodcutter who had found the gold. Years passed, and Ram's life became better. He lived comfortably, and he always remembered the tree's warning. He never spent more than he needed. He was careful to share with others and remained humble. One day, a traveler came to the village. He heard about Ram's good fortune and went to meet him. The traveler was greedy and wanted to know how Ram had become so rich. When Ram told him the story about the tree, the traveler grew excited. "I could be richer than him," the traveler thought. "Why settle for just enough when I can have it all?" The traveler rushed to the forest and found the same tree. He chopped at it with his axe, just as Ram had done. The tree spoke just as it had before. "Please don't cut me down," the tree said. The traveler was not surprised. He had heard the story, so he knew what to expect. "I don't need your warning. I want to be richer. I don't want just enough. I want it all." The tree was sad but agreed. "I will grant you a wish," it said. "But remember what I told Ram. You must only take what you need." The traveler, not caring about the warning, wished for piles of gold and jewels. The tree granted his wish, and the traveler was soon carrying a heavy sack of gold. But greed was in his heart, and he thought it was not enough. He took more and more gold from the tree, ignoring the warning. When the traveler returned to the village, he showed off the gold he had gotten from the tree. Everyone was amazed, but the traveler's greed did not stop. He kept going back to the tree, asking for more and more until one day he never returned. Months passed, and the villagers began to wonder where the traveler had gone. Ram was one of the few who had seen him last. He knew something was wrong. Ram went into the forest to search for the traveler. Deep in the forest, he found the old tree. The tree was sad, and it spoke to him. "The traveler took too much," the tree said. "He ignored my warning, and now he is lost. Greed has led him astray. He wanted more than he needed, and now he will never return." Ram felt sorry for the traveler. He had been greedy and careless, and now he was paying the price. "What happened to him?" Ram asked. "He became lost in the forest," the tree replied. "Greed blinded him, and he wandered until he could not find his way back." Ram realized the truth. He returned to the village and shared the story with everyone. The villagers learned an important lesson. Greed could take away everything, even what was already given. From then on, Ram continued to live a simple life. He never took more than he needed and always helped others. The villagers respected him even more. They knew that true happiness didn't come from gold and jewels, but from being content with what you have and sharing with those in need. The tree, too, was happy. It continued to grow tall and strong, knowing that Ram had kept his promise. And though the traveler never returned, the story of his greed lived on as a warning to all who heard it. The moral of the story is simple. Greed never leads to happiness. Always be content with what you have and share with others. Story 2. The Kind Stranger. Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled between hills, there lived a man named Ravi. Ravi was a farmer. He worked hard every day, but he was poor. His small farm barely gave him enough food to survive. Still, Ravi was kind and generous. He helped his neighbors whenever they needed him, even though he had little for himself. One evening, after a long day of work, Ravi was walking back to his hut. On the way, he saw an old man sitting by the side of the road. The old man looked tired and hungry. His clothes were torn and he had no shoes. Ravi felt sorry for him. He stopped and asked, "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The old man looked up and nodded. "I have not eaten all day," he said. "I have no home and no family. I am very tired." Ravi thought for a moment. He didn't have much food at home, but he couldn't leave the old man like this. "Come with me," Ravi said. "I don't have much, but I'll share what I have." The old man smiled and stood up slowly. Together they walked to Ravi's hut. Ravi gave the old man a warm meal. It was simple, just rice and some vegetables, but the old man ate it happily. After eating, he thanked Ravi. "You are very kind," he said. Ravi smiled. "It's nothing. You needed help and I was here." The old man stayed with Ravi that night. The next morning, as the sun rose, he prepared to leave. Before he went, he said, "You have a good heart, Ravi. Because of your kindness, I want to give you something." Ravi was surprised. "Give me something? But you have nothing." The old man laughed. "I have more than you think," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, shiny stone. It sparkled in the sunlight. "This is a magical stone," the old man said. "It will give you one wish. But remember, use it wisely. And never let greed guide your heart." Ravi didn't know what to say. "A magical stone?" he asked. "Is this real?" The old man nodded. "Yes, but you must promise to use it only for good." Ravi thought for a moment. "I promise," he said. The old man handed him the stone and walked away. Ravi stood there, holding the stone in his hand. He felt a strange warmth from it. He wondered what he should wish for. That night, as Ravi lay in his bed, he thought about his wish. "I don't want to be rich," he said to himself, "but it would be nice to have enough food to eat every day and a better house to live in." The next morning, Ravi held the stone and made his wish. "I wish for a small but comfortable house and enough food to live without worry." The stone glowed brightly for a moment and then disappeared. Ravi looked around, but everything seemed the same. He sighed, thinking it might have been a trick. But when he stepped outside, he was amazed. His old hut was gone. In its place stood a neat, cozy house with a thatched roof and a small garden. Inside, there was a table full of fresh fruits, vegetables, and bread. Ravi couldn't believe his eyes. He was overjoyed and thanked the old man in his heart. From that day on, Ravi's life became easier. He had enough food and a comfortable place to live. But he didn't forget his promise to use the gift for good. Whenever someone in the village needed help, Ravi was there. If someone was hungry, he shared his food. If someone needed a place to stay, he opened his home. The villagers loved and respected him even more. One day, a rich merchant visited the village. He heard about Ravi and his sudden good fortune. The merchant was greedy and wanted to know Ravi's secret. He went to Ravi and asked, "How did you become so fortunate?" Ravi was honest and told him about the old man and the magical stone. The merchant's eyes lit up with greed. "A magical stone?" he thought. "If I had it, I could wish for all the riches in the world." The merchant searched the village and surrounding hills for the old man, but he couldn't find him. Frustrated, he decided to trick Ravi. He went to Ravi and said, "You are so lucky. I wish I could be like you. But look, your house is small. Don't you want a bigger one? And more gold? Ravi shook his head. I have everything I need, he said. The merchant was annoyed. You're wasting your fortune, he exclaimed. If I had that stone, I would have wished for much more. Ravi smiled. That's the difference between us, he said. I am content with what I have. Greed only brings unhappiness. The merchant didn't listen. He left the village, angry and empty-handed. Meanwhile, Ravi continued to live a peaceful life. The villagers learned from his example and realized the importance of kindness and contentment. The old man never returned, but Ravi never forgot him. Every time he looked at his home or shared his food with someone in need, he remembered the old man's words, "Use it only for good." The moral of the story is, kindness and contentment bring true happiness, while greed only leads to emptiness. Story 3. The Golden Nest. In a small village near a vast forest, there lived a boy named Karen. Karen was an orphan. He lived alone in a tiny, run-down hut. Though poor, Karen had a cheerful heart. He was kind to everyone, and his neighbors adored him. He earned his living by gathering firewood from the forest and selling it in the market. One bright morning, Karen went into the forest. The air was fresh, and birds chirped high in the trees. Karen liked the forest, felt alive and full of wonders. As he searched for dry wood, he saw something strange. A golden bird sitting on a low branch of a tree. The bird had shimmering feathers that sparkled like sunlight. Karen had never seen such a bird before. "You're beautiful," he said softly, so as not to scare it away. To his surprise, the bird spoke. "Thank you, kind boy," it said in a sweet, melodic voice. Karen was startled. You can talk?" "Yes," the bird replied. "I am no ordinary bird. I am magical. I have been watching you, Karen. You are kind and hardworking. Even though life has not been easy for you," Karen smiled. "Thank you, but I just try to do my best." The bird hopped closer. "I want to help you," it said. "I will grant you one wish. But remember, choose wisely and use it for good." Karen was surprised and didn't know what to say. "One wish?" he asked. "Yes," said the bird. "Anything you desire can be yours." Karen thought about it for a moment. "I don't want riches," he said, "but life is hard, and sometimes I don't have enough food. I wish for a comfortable life, with enough food to eat and a warm place to live." The bird nodded. "That is a wise and humble wish," it said. "Tomorrow morning, your life will change." With that, the bird flapped its golden wings and flew away. Karen watched until it disappeared into the trees. That night, Karen returned to his hut. He went to bed feeling hopeful but unsure if the bird's promise would come true. The next morning, when he woke up, Karen couldn't believe his eyes. His tiny hut had turned into a cozy little house with a sturdy roof and clean walls. Inside, there was a table filled with fruits, bread, and milk. A small garden outside was full of vegetables. Karen was overjoyed. He thanked the bird in his heart and decided to share his good fortune. He invited his neighbors to his home and offered them food. The villagers were amazed. They asked him how he had become so lucky. Karen told them about the golden bird but warned them not to be greedy. "The bird told me to use my gift wisely and for good," he said. The villagers admired Karen even more. He remained humble and continued to help others. Whenever someone was hungry or needed shelter, Karen was there for them. One day, a rich and arrogant man named Mohan visited the village. He had heard about Karen's magical encounter. Mohan was greedy and wanted the golden bird for himself. "Where is this bird?" Mohan demanded when he met Karen. "I don't know," Karen replied honestly. "It appeared to me when I was in the forest. I don't know where it is now." But Mohan didn't believe him. He went into the forest, determined to find the golden bird. For days he searched, calling out for the bird. Finally, one evening, the golden bird appeared. Mohan's eyes lit up with greed. "You must grant me a wish," he demanded. The bird tilted its head. "I will grant you a wish, but only if you promise to use it wisely and for good," it said. "I promise," Mohan said quickly, though he had no intention of keeping his word. Mohan's wish was simple. "I want to be the richest man in the world." The golden bird frowned. "Be careful," it warned. "Greed can lead to unhappiness." But Mohan ignored the warning. The bird flapped its wings, and in an instant, Mohan was surrounded by piles of gold coins and jewels. He laughed loudly, thrilled by his new wealth. However, as time passed, Mohan's greed only grew. He wanted more and more. He began to guard his riches, fearing someone might steal them. He stopped trusting people and drove everyone away, even his friends. Alone and paranoid, Mohan realized his wealth had brought him no joy. The riches he had wished for now felt like a burden. He tried to find the golden bird again, hoping to wish for something else, but it never returned. Meanwhile, Karen continued to live happily in his small home. He remained kind and content, helping others and sharing what he had. One day, an old villager said to him, "Karen, you could have wished for riches like Mohan. Why didn't you?" Karen smiled. "Because happiness doesn't come from having more than others. It comes from being content and sharing what you have." The moral of the story is, greed leads to misery, while kindness and contentment bring true happiness. Story 4. The Magic Paintbrush. Long ago, in a small village surrounded by mountains, there lived a boy named Manu. Manu was poor but had a big heart. He was kind and helpful to everyone. Manu loved to draw. He didn't have paper or paints, so he drew pictures on the ground with a stick. The villagers often watched Manu create beautiful pictures. He drew mountains, rivers, and animals that looked so real, it felt like they could come to life. "If only you had a real paintbrush," they said. Manu smiled. "One day maybe I will," he replied. One evening, As Manu was walking home from the fields, he saw an old man sitting by the side of the road. The man looked tired and weak. Manu quickly ran to him. "Are you all right, sir?" Manu asked. The old man nodded. "I have walked a long way and need some food and water," he said. Manu didn't have much, but he offered the bread and water he had saved for himself. "Please take this," he said. The old man ate and drank gratefully. "You are very kind, Manu," he said. Manu was surprised. "How do you know my name?" he asked. The old man smiled. "I know more about you than you think," he said. "I know you are kind, and I know you love to draw." Manu nodded shyly. "It's true. I wish I could paint real pictures one day." The old man reached into his bag and pulled out a paintbrush. It was simple but beautifully crafted. "Take this," he said. "It's a magic paintbrush. Whatever you paint with it will come to life." Manu couldn't believe his ears. "Really? But why are you giving it to me?" "Because you have a good heart," the old man said. "But remember, use it wisely. Only paint what is needed, and never let greed take over." Manu promised and took the brush. The old man smiled and disappeared into the night. The next morning, Manu decided to test the brush. He painted a simple bowl of rice on the wall of his hut. To his amazement, the bowl came to life. He picked it up and found it was real. Manu was thrilled. He painted a pair of shoes for himself, a warm blanket, and even a small lantern to light his hut. He was careful not to paint more than he needed. When the villagers heard about the magic paintbrush, they came to Manu for help. A farmer who had lost his plow asked for a new one. A poor widow needed food for her children. Manu painted everything they needed, and their lives improved. Everyone praised Manu for his kindness and generosity. "He uses his gift to help others," they said. One day, the king of the land heard about Manu and his magic paintbrush. The king was greedy and wanted the brush for himself. He sent his soldiers to bring Manu to the palace. When Manu arrived, the king said, "I have heard about your magic brush. Paint me a mountain of gold." Manu shook his head. "The brush is meant for good, not greed," he said. The king was angry. "If you do not obey me, I will take the brush by force." Manu thought quickly. He agreed to paint for the king but had a clever plan. He began to paint a large mountain of gold, just as the king had asked. But before he finished, he painted a deep river around the mountain. "Why is there a river?" the king asked. "It is to protect the gold," Manu replied. The king, blinded by greed, ordered his soldiers to cross the river and get the gold. As they stepped into the river, Manu painted it wider and deeper. The soldiers couldn't reach the mountain. The king grew furious. "Bring me the gold," he shouted. Manu then painted a giant wave that swept the king and his soldiers far away. The villagers cheered as Manu returned with his brush. From that day on, Manu continued to use the magic paintbrush to help others. He painted food, tools, and even houses for those in need. The village prospered, not because of greed, but because of kindness and sharing. Manu never saw the old man again, but he remembered his words, "Use it wisely," and he did for the rest of his life. The moral of the story is, use your gifts to help others and never let greed control you. True happiness lies in kindness and generosity. Story 5. The Wise Turtle. Once upon a time, in a small village near a sparkling river, there lived a fisherman named Arjun. He was poor but hard-working. Every day he went to the river to catch fish and sell them in the market. The money he earned was just enough to buy food for himself and his old mother. Arjun loved the river. It was not just his source of livelihood, but also his place of peace. He often sat by the riverbank, watching the water flow and listening to the songs of the birds. One morning, Arjun cast his net into the water as usual. He waited patiently. When he pulled up the net, he was surprised to find something unusual. Among the fish, there was a large turtle trapped in the net. Its shell was shining, almost golden, and its eyes looked wise and kind. Arjun gently picked up the turtle and set it aside. He planned to release it back into the water after sorting his catch. But before he could, the turtle spoke. "Wait," it said. Arjun jumped back, startled. "You can talk?" "Yes," the turtle said with a calm voice. "I am no ordinary turtle. I am the guardian of this river." Arjun was amazed. "I didn't mean to harm you," he said. "I will let you go." The turtle smiled. "Thank you for your kindness," it said. "Because you have a good heart, I want to reward you. I will grant you one wish. But remember, choose wisely and use it for good." Arjun was surprised and thought for a moment. "I don't want riches," he said. "I just wish for a better life for my mother and me. Enough food, a stronger boat, and a safe house." The turtle nodded. "Your wish is granted," it said. "Go home and see." Arjun released the turtle into the river and hurried back to his hut. When he reached home, he couldn't believe his eyes. His old, leaky hut had turned into a sturdy little house with a strong roof. Outside, there was a garden full of vegetables and fruit trees. By the river, a shiny new boat waited for him. Arjun ran to his mother and hugged her. "Our lives will be better now," he said. From that day, Arjun worked hard but with less worry. He had enough food, a safe home, and a strong boat that made fishing easier. He used his extra time to help his neighbors. If someone was hungry, he shared his food. If someone needed help, he was always there. The villagers admired Arjun for his generosity. "He has a good heart," they said. One day, a rich merchant named Ratan came to the village. He heard about Arjun's good fortune and grew jealous. How did this poor fisherman become so lucky? He wondered. Ratan approached Arjun and asked him. Arjun, being honest, told him about the wise turtle. "A talking turtle that grants wishes?" Ratan said, his eyes gleaming with greed. "I must find it." The next morning, Ratan went to the river. He cast his net and waited. He stayed by the river all day, determined to find the magical turtle. Just as the sun was setting, he caught something heavy in his net. When he pulled it up, he found the golden turtle. The turtle looked at him calmly. "Why have you caught me?" it asked. "I know who you are," Rutten said. "I demand a wish." The turtle frowned. "I will grant you one wish," it said. "But remember, greed can lead to trouble. Choose wisely." Rutten laughed. "Don't lecture me. I wish to be the richest man in the world." The turtle sighed but agreed. "Your wish is granted," it said, and it disappeared into the water. When Rutten returned home, he found his house filled with gold coins, jewels, and treasures. He was overjoyed, but his happiness didn't last long. As word of his wealth spread, thieves and robbers began to target him. Rutten became paranoid. He hired guards to protect his treasures and built high walls around his house. He stopped trusting people and became lonely. Meanwhile, Arjun continued to live a simple, happy life. He used what he had to help others and stayed humble. The villagers respected him and often came to him for advice. One day, Rutten, now miserable despite his riches, came to Arjun. "You were right," he admitted. "Greed has brought me nothing but unhappiness." Arjun smiled. "It's not too late to change," he said. "True happiness comes from sharing and being content." Rutten thought about Arjun's words and decided to follow his example. He gave away much of his wealth to the poor and started helping others. Slowly, he began to find peace. The wise turtle was never seen again, but its lesson remained in the hearts of those who heard the story. The moral of the story is, contentment and kindness lead to true happiness, while greed only brings misery. Story 6. The Hidden Treasure. In a quiet village surrounded by green fields, there lived a man named Hari. Hari was a farmer who worked from dawn to dusk in his small patch of land. His life was simple, and though he had little, he was grateful for what he had. Hari was known for his honesty and kindness. Whenever someone needed help, he was the first to lend a hand. The villagers loved him, but they often wondered how he stayed so cheerful despite his hardships. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Hari was walking home. The setting sun painted the sky orange and pink. On the side of the road, he noticed something shiny sticking out of the dirt. Curious, he bent down and dug it out. It was an old, rusty lamp. Hari wiped it with his sleeve to clean it. Suddenly, the lamp began to glow, and a cloud of smoke rose from it. To his astonishment, a genie appeared. "Thank you for freeing me," the genie boomed. "I was trapped in that lamp for 100 years. To show my gratitude, I will grant you one wish." Hari was speechless. He had heard stories of magical genies but never thought he would meet one. "Only one wish?" Hari asked. "Yes," the genie said. "So think carefully and choose wisely. But remember, use it for good, not greed." Hari thought for a moment. He didn't want gold or jewels. He didn't want a palace or riches. He simply wanted to make life better for himself and those around him. I wish for my land to become fertile and provide enough crops so I can share them with others, Hari said. The genie smiled. A wise and selfless wish, he said. He waved his hand, and the lamp vanished. Your wish is granted. Go home and see. The next morning, Hari went to his field and couldn't believe his eyes. The dry, barren land was now lush and green. Crops of wheat, rice, and vegetables grew in abundance. Birds chirped happily, and the air was filled with the scent of fresh earth. Hari was overjoyed. He worked hard to harvest the crops and shared them with the villagers. No one in the village went hungry, and everyone praised Hari for his generosity. One day, a wealthy landlord named Dhunraj visited the village. He saw Hari's thriving fields and asked, "How did you manage to grow so much in such a short time?" Hari told him about the genie and the wish. Dhunraj's eyes widened with greed. A genie that grants wishes, he thought. I must find it. The next evening, Dhunraj went to the spot where Hari had found the lamp. He searched for hours but found nothing. Frustrated, he came up with a plan to trick Hari. Dhunraj went to Hari and said, "Your fields are amazing, but think about how much more you could do if you had gold. You could build a palace, hire workers, and live like a king. Tell me where to find the lamp, and I'll share the wealth with you." Hari shook his head. "The lamp is gone, and I don't need gold," he said. "I am happy with what I have." Dhunraj didn't believe him. He tried digging around the spot, bribing villagers, and even searching the forest, but he never found the lamp. Meanwhile, Hari's life continued peacefully. He grew more crops, shared more food, and helped the village flourish. The villagers learned from him that happiness doesn't come from riches, but from kindness and gratitude. Dhunraj, on the other hand, became bitter and lonely. His greed consumed him, and he could find no joy in his wealth. One day, he approached Hari and said, "I don't understand. You have so little, yet you're happy. What's your secret?" Hari smiled. "Happiness comes from contentment," he said. "When you share what you have and help others, life feels richer than any gold." The landlord thought deeply about Hari's words. Slowly, he began to change. He started helping the villagers and stopped chasing wealth. Over time, he found peace in giving rather than taking. As for the genie, it was never seen again. But Hari's kindness and the lessons it inspired remained in the hearts of the villagers forever. The moral of the story is, true happiness comes from sharing and being content, not from chasing wealth or possessions. Story 7. The Honest Woodcutter. In a small village surrounded by dense woods, there lived a woodcutter named Ramesh. He was poor but honest. Every morning, he went to the forest with his axe to chop wood. He sold the wood in the market and used the money to buy food for his family. Ramesh worked hard, but he never complained. He believed that honesty and hard work were the keys to a happy life. One day, as Ramesh was chopping a tree near a river, his axe slipped from his hands and fell into the water. The river was deep, and the axe sank quickly. Ramesh sat down in despair. Without his axe, he couldn't work. "What will I do now?" he thought sadly. Suddenly, the water in the river began to ripple. a shining figure emerged. It was the river goddess. She had long flowing hair and a kind smile. "Why are you so sad, Ramesh?" she asked. Ramesh stood up and bowed. "My axe fell into the river, goddess," he said. "Without it, I cannot earn a living." The goddess nodded. "Wait here," she said, and she disappeared into the water. A moment later, she returned holding a golden axe. "Is this your axe?" she asked. Ramesh shook his head. "No, goddess. My axe was made of iron." The goddess smiled and dove back into the river. This time she came up with a silver axe. "Is this your axe?" she asked. Ramesh shook his head again. "No, goddess. My axe was simple and made of iron." The goddess disappeared once more and returned with an old iron axe. "Is this your axe?" she asked. Ramesh's face lit up. "Yes, that is my axe," he said. The goddess was pleased with Ramesh's honesty. "You could have taken the golden or silver axe, but you chose to be truthful. As a reward for your honesty, I will give you all 3 axes," she said. Ramesh was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, goddess," he said, bowing deeply. He returned to the village with the 3 axes. When his neighbors heard the story, they praised Ramesh for his honesty. "He deserves the reward," they said. However, one greedy man named Raghu heard about the incident and decided to try his luck. The next day, Raghu went to the same spot by the river. He threw his axe into the water on purpose and began to cry loudly. The river goddess appeared, just as Raghu had hoped. "Why are you crying?" she asked. "My axe fell into the river, goddess," Raghu said, pretending to be upset. The goddess nodded and went into the water. She returned with a golden axe. "Is this your axe?" she asked. Raghu's eyes sparkled with greed. "Yes, that's my axe," he lied. The goddess frowned. "You are lying," she said. "This is not your axe." She disappeared into the water, and when she returned, she had no axe at all. "Because of your dishonesty, you will get nothing," she said firmly, and she vanished. Raghu was left with nothing. He regretted his greed and dishonesty, but it was too late. Meanwhile, Ramesh continued to work hard and live an honest life. He used the golden and silver axes wisely, selling them to improve his family's life and helping others in the village. His honesty and kindness made him respected and loved by all. The moral of the story is, honesty is always rewarded, while greed and dishonesty lead to loss. Story 8. The Clever Sparrow. Once upon a time, in a peaceful village, there lived a clever little sparrow named Chintu. Chintu had a small nest on a big mango tree near a farm. He spent his days chirping happily and finding grains in the fields. Though he was small, Chintu was known for his sharp mind and quick thinking. One day, Chintu noticed something unusual. A hunter had come to the village and was setting traps near the tree. The hunter placed seeds and grains around the traps to attract birds. Chintu watched from his nest and felt worried. I must warn the other birds, he thought. Chintu flew to the nearby trees and called out, "Friends, don't go near the traps. The hunter has laid them to catch us." Some birds listened to him and stayed away, but a few greedy ones didn't believe him. "Those seeds look delicious," said a pigeon. "Nothing will happen to us." Chintu tried to stop them. "Please trust me. It's dangerous," he pleaded. But the greedy birds ignored him and flew to the traps. As soon as they started eating the seeds, the traps closed, and they were caught. The hunter laughed and took them away. Chintu felt sad for the birds, but knew he had done his best to warn them. The next day, the hunter came back and set even more traps. This time, he placed a big pile of grains right under Chintu's tree. "Now I'll catch many birds at once," the hunter said to himself. Chintu saw the traps and thought, "I need a clever plan to stop him." He flew to the farm and saw a group of cows grazing. One of the cows, a kind old one named Gauri, was Chintu's friend. "Gauri, I need your help," Chintu said. "What's wrong, Chintu?" Gauri asked. Chintu explained about the hunter and his traps. "If you and the other cows walk through the field where the traps are, you can crush them with your hooves. Then the hunter won't be able to catch any birds," he said. Gauri nodded. "That's a smart idea, Chintu. Let's do it." Gauri and the other cows walked through the field, crushing all the traps under their heavy hooves. The hunter, who was hiding nearby, was shocked when he saw his traps destroyed. "What happened to my traps?" he shouted angrily. Chintu chirped happily from his tree. "Your greed and cruelty won't succeed here," he said. The hunter tried to set more traps, but each time, Chintu found a way to outsmart him. Sometimes he warned the birds, and sometimes he used other animals to help destroy the traps. Frustrated, the hunter finally gave up and left the village. The birds and animals were grateful to Chintu for protecting them. "You may be small, Chintu, but you are the smartest and bravest of us all," they said. From that day on, Chintu became a hero in the village. The birds learned to be cautious, and they listened to his advice. The animals, too, admired his cleverness and teamwork. The moral of the story is, wisdom and teamwork can overcome even the greatest challenges. Story 9. The Loyal Dog. In a quiet village by the river, there lived a farmer named Mohan and his loyal dog, Bruno. Bruno was more than just a pet. He was Mohan's best friend. The two shared a bond of trust and love that nothing could break. Bruno was no ordinary dog. He was clever and always alert. He helped Mohan guard the fields, fetch tools, and even herd the goats. The villagers often said, if everyone had a friend like Bruno, the world would be a better place. One night, as the village slept under the pale light of the moon, Bruno sensed something unusual. He heard rustling near the chicken coop. Quietly, he got up and sniffed the air. The scent of strangers made his ears perk up. Two thieves had sneaked into the farm. They planned to steal the chickens and anything valuable they could find. Bruno growled softly, his sharp eyes watching their every move. The thieves didn't notice him at first. They whispered to each other, "Let's grab the chickens quickly and leave." But as they approached the coop, Bruno sprang into action. He barked loudly, startling the thieves. One of them dropped the sack he was carrying. "Quiet that dog," hissed the other. Bruno stood his ground, barking louder and louder. The noise woke Mohan, who rushed outside with a lantern in hand. "What's going on, Bruno?" Mohan asked. The thieves panicked and ran into the dark fields, leaving behind the sack and their tools. Bruno chased them for a while but stopped when they disappeared into the forest. He returned to Mohan, wagging his tail proudly. Mohan patted Bruno's head. "You saved us, my friend," he said. The next morning, the villagers gathered around Mohan's farm to hear the story. They admired Bruno's bravery. "What a loyal and clever dog," they said. From that day, Bruno became a hero in the village. Mohan took extra care of him, making sure he always had the best food and a warm place to sleep. But Bruno's story didn't end there. A few weeks later, disaster struck the village. Heavy rains caused the river to overflow, and soon the fields were flooded. The water rose quickly, forcing the villagers to leave their homes and seek higher ground. Mohan carried what little he could and called out for Bruno. "Come, Bruno, we must go." But Bruno barked and ran toward the barn. Mohan followed him and found a young goat trapped in the rising water. The poor animal was bleeding helplessly. "Good boy, Bruno," Mohan said as he lifted the goat onto his shoulders. Bruno didn't stop there. He ran back and forth, guiding Mohan to other animals that needed help. Together, they saved the goats, chickens, and even a frightened cat. When the villagers saw Mohan and Bruno rescuing the animals, they joined in to help. Soon, everyone was safe on higher ground, thanks to Bruno's quick thinking and loyalty. After the floods receded, the villagers returned to rebuild their homes. They never forgot Bruno's bravery and selflessness. They often said, "A true hero isn't the one with strength, but the one with a big heart." Mohan hugged Bruno tightly. "You are not just a dog," he said. "You are my family." The moral of the story is loyalty and courage, even in the smallest of creatures, can make a big difference. Story 10. The Magic Pot. Long ago, in a small village surrounded by mountains, there lived a poor farmer named Kiran. He worked tirelessly on his small patch of land but could barely grow enough to feed his family. Despite his struggles, Kiran was kind-hearted and always ready to help others. One day, while plowing his field, Kiran's plow hit something hard. Curious, he dug into the soil and found an old clay pot. It looked ordinary, but it was unusually heavy. What could be inside? Kiran wondered. He took the pot home and placed it near the fire to clean off the dirt. To his surprise, the pot began to glow. A gentle voice came from within. "Thank you for freeing me," the voice said. "I am a magic pot, and I will grant you one wish. But remember, use it wisely." Kiran was amazed but also cautious. I don't want gold or riches, he thought. What should I ask for? After thinking for a while, Kirin said, I wish for my land to be fertile and always produce enough food for everyone in my village. The pot glowed brightly. Your wish is granted, it said, and the light faded. The next morning, Kirin went to his field and was astonished. The barren land was now lush and green, filled with crops ready for harvest. The soil seemed to sparkle in the sunlight, rich and full of life. Kirin worked hard to harvest the crops and shared them with his neighbors. Soon, the entire village had plenty to eat. No one went hungry, and everyone praised Kirin for his generosity. Word of Kirin's magical field spread to a neighboring village. A greedy merchant named Thunpal heard the story and decided to visit Kirin. When Thunpal saw the thriving fields, he said, Kirin, how did you make your land so fertile? Kirin, being honest, told him about the magic pot. A magic pot that grants wishes? Thunpal said, his eyes lighting up with greed. I must have it. That night, Thunpal sneaked into Kirin's house and stole the pot. He hurried home and placed it on his table. I must think carefully, he said to himself. What should I wish for? Gold? Jewels? Or perhaps a palace? Finally, he made his wish. I want to be the richest man in the world, he declared. The pot began to glow, but instead of granting his wish, it laughed. You are too greedy, the pot said. Your wish will only bring trouble. Thunpal ignored the warning. The next morning, his house was filled with gold and jewels. Overjoyed, he danced around, thinking he was the happiest man alive. But soon the news of his wealth spread. Thieves and robbers came, trying to steal his treasures. Thunpal grew paranoid. He built high walls around his house and hired guards to protect his riches. Despite all his efforts, Thunpal found no peace. He couldn't trust anyone and became lonely. He regretted his greed but didn't know how to fix his mistake. Meanwhile, Kirin continued to live happily. He used his fertile land to help others and taught the villagers the importance of sharing and kindness. One day, Thunpal visited Kirin and returned the pot. I was wrong, he admitted. Greed has brought me nothing but misery. Kirin smiled and said, happiness comes not from what we take but from what we give. Thunpal learned his lesson and began helping others. Though the magic pot never granted him another wish, he found joy in sharing and became a better man. As for Kirin, he kept the pot safely in his home, using its blessing only to benefit others. The village prospered, and the people lived in harmony, always remembering the lesson of the magic pot. The moral of the story is, greed leads to misery, but kindness and generosity bring true happiness. Story 11. The Wise Owl and the Foolish Crow. In a dense forest, there lived a wise old owl named Guru. Guru was respected by all the animals for his wisdom and fairness. He lived in the hollow of an ancient tree and spent his days observing the forest and solving disputes among its inhabitants. One day, a crow named Kalu moved into the forest. Kalu was clever but also very proud. He often bragged about his speed, sharp beak, and ability to find food. The other animals grew tired of his boasting. I am the smartest bird in this forest, Kalu would say loudly. Guru, who had seen many creatures like Kalu, simply watched in silence. One afternoon, while flying around, Kalu noticed a shiny piece of cheese on a rock. He swooped down and grabbed it with his beak. As he perched on a branch to enjoy his treat, a sly fox named Raka appeared below. Raka was always on the lookout for opportunities. When he saw the cheese in Kalu's beak, he decided to trick him. "Oh, mighty Kalu," Raka called out. "Your feathers are so glossy, and your beak is so sharp. Truly, you are the most handsome bird in this forest." Kalu puffed out his chest, feeling proud. "But I've heard you can sing beautifully too," Raka continued. "Will you honor me with a song?" Kalu hesitated. He wanted to show off his voice, but the cheese was still in his beak. Guru, who was watching from his tree, called out, "Be careful, Kalu. Flattery can be a trap." But Kalu ignored the owl's advice. "This fox admires me," he thought. "I should prove that I'm the best." Kalu opened his beak to caw, and the cheese fell to the ground. Raka snatched it up and ran off, laughing. Kalu felt humiliated. He flew to Guru's tree and said, "You were right, Guru. I let my pride and foolishness get the better of me." Guru nodded. "It's good that you've learned a lesson," he said. "True wisdom is knowing when to ignore flattery and stay focused." Kalu promised to be more cautious and humble from then on. The animals in the forest noticed the change in Kalu. He no longer bragged about his abilities and became a more likable bird. Over time, he earned the respect of the other animals, not through pride, but through kindness and sincerity. The moral of the story is, beware of flattery and always listen to wise advice. Story 12. The Honest Farmer and the Lost Coin. In a peaceful village, there lived a hard-working farmer named Raj. He owned a small piece of land where he grew crops and took care of his cows. Raj was known throughout the village for his honesty and kind nature. Every morning, he would wake up early to tend to his farm and help his neighbors whenever they needed it. One day, as Raj was working in the fields, he found a shiny coin buried in the soil. It was made of pure gold, and it glimmered in the sunlight. Raj picked it up and examined it closely. "This coin must belong to someone," he thought. "I should find the owner." Raj put the coin in his pocket and continued working. He asked the villagers if anyone had lost a coin, but no one claimed it. Raj was not the kind of person to keep something that didn't belong to him. So he decided to go to the village square and announce that he had found a gold coin. As Raj made his way to the village, he saw a man named Vikram sitting by the well. Vikram was a wealthy merchant who often boasted about his money and status. When he saw Raj with the coin, his eyes widened. "That's a gold coin," Vikram said with excitement. "Where did you find it, Raj?" Raj explained how he had found the coin in his field and was now looking for its owner. Vikram smiled slyly. "I think that coin belongs to me," he said. "I lost it last week while I was traveling through the village. You must have found it on your farm." Raj was unsure but didn't want to cause trouble. If it belongs to you, I will give it to you, Vikram, he said, holding out the coin. But just as Vikram reached for it, a woman named Meera walked by. Meera was a simple, honest woman who lived in the village. She saw the coin and gasped. "That coin!" Meera cried. "That coin belongs to my husband. He lost it while working in the fields last week." Raj looked at Vikram, then at Meera. He knew that Meera was a truthful woman, and her words rang true. Vikram quickly tried to cover up. No, he said. "I'm sure it's mine. I've lost a coin, and this is the same one." But Raj was not fooled. "I think you are lying, Vikram," he said firmly. "Meera's husband lost the coin, and it's only right that it goes back to them." Vikram's face turned red with anger. "You dare to accuse me of lying?" he shouted. "I will have you thrown out of the village for this." But the villagers who had gathered around all knew Vikram's reputation. They trusted Raj's honesty and Meera's words. "Raj is right," said one of the villagers. "Meera's husband lost the coin, and it should go back to them." Vikram realized he could not fool everyone. He walked away, embarrassed. Raj gave the coin to Meera, who thanked him with a warm smile. "Thank you, Raj," she said. "You've proven that honesty is more valuable than any gold." The villagers praised Raj for his honesty and courage. "Raj is a man of true character," they said. "We are lucky to have him in our village." From that day on, Raj's reputation grew even stronger. His honesty and fairness made him a respected figure in the village. The moral of the story is, honesty is always the best choice, even when others try to deceive you.